I'm Colin Marshall, host and producer of the podcast Notebook on Cities and Culture and author of the forthcoming book, A Los Angeles Primer, Mastering the Stateless City. More than 30 years after its unsuccessful first run, audiences have long since accepted Ridley Scott's Blade Runner as the vision of the future of Los Angeles. Especially this opening shot, which the film's art team built out of small-scale models, matte painting, and oil drum fires originally photographed for Michelangelo Antonioni's Los Angeles picture, Zabriskie Point. Blade Runner's Los Angeles, the product of a huge amount of such hand craftsmanship, returns the 21st century city to the dense, smoke-belching 19th century industrial phase it never really passed through in the first place. But have viewers actually believed that such a thorough transformation lies ahead, or has the film's imagination alone compelled them? It takes no great apparent pains to locate its more fantastical constructions, such as this colossal pyramid which houses the offices of the artificial human manufacturing Tyrell Corporation, on the map of the present-day city. Many of its street scenes, no matter how visually abundant, play out on the same few studio backlots. Still, Blade Runner's vision holds up today, an endurance which has much to do with its foundation of real past, which futuristic cinema too often lacks. This past shows up most clearly in the form of famous works of Los Angeles architecture. I hereby direct you to Tom Anderson's documentary Los Angeles Plays Itself, which I recommend you view as often as possible, for the last word on the film's use of such buildings as the 1939 Art Deco Spanish Revival Union Station in the role of police headquarters, Frank Lloyd Wright's 1924 Mayan Revival Ennis House in the role of Detective Rick Deckard's at least 97-story apartment building, and a creatively ruined 1893 Renaissance Revival Bradbury building as the site of the final showdown. Anderson sums up the appeal of Blade Runner's Los Angeles as follows. Perhaps it expresses a nostalgia for a dystopian vision of the future that has become outdated. This vision offered some consolation because it was at least sublime. Now the future looks brighter, hotter, and blander. But I do wonder, despite the pejorative currency of the term Blade Runnerization among opponents of high-density, high-rise development, how dystopian does this even look today? Certainly, given the Western business anxieties of the early 1980s, the Japanification of the streetscape would have looked at the time like a fearful prediction of the economic subservience to come. But even though Japan's bubble, so grotesquely inflated in those days, burst long ago, that country's style of free-form, constantly self-renewing urbanism still offers an example from which cities around the world, not least Los Angeles, could stand to learn. Blade Runner also foresees elements of city building Los Angeles would later get right. Ridley Scott describes this as a retrofitted future, with the strikingly new bolted straight on to the weathered, worn old. In a way, its use of the likes of the Bradbury predicted the adaptive reuse ordinance of the late 1990s, which set off downtown's real-life revival by allowing the conversion of old buildings to new uses. Despite its pass with flying colors of the test of time, Blade Runner still gets its style occasionally cramped by mid-century American ideas of the future. Flying cars. Need I say more? Yet these vehicles, called spinners, admittedly do look pretty interesting, much more so than Deckard's own non-flying car, which he does on a couple of occasions drive through the commercial beloved 2nd Street Tunnel, its tiles just hosed down for even more of a reflective sheen than usual. If the flying cars date the film's future, then so, I suppose, must its print newspapers, its video payphones, its Hare Krishnas, and its indoor smoking.
Know what a turtle is?
But shouldn't we forgive these things in light of its tradition? We think of Blade Runner as a work of proto-cyberpunk, which William Gibson calls the intersection of high-tech and low-life. But it also counts as a work of future noir, also the title of a book on the film's production. And if Los Angeles is a cyberpunk city, it's even more of a noir city. Classic noir films and novels put their protagonists, usually private investigators and thus by necessity loners and masters of the city, up against not just the potentially harmful individuals they investigate, but the vast, hostile urban environment itself. Blade Runner has Deckard hunt down 4 replicants, those Tyrell-made artificial humans of exaggerated strength and abbreviated lifespan, who have escaped their off-world mining colony into this vast, hostile Los Angeles of 2019. The city has also by this point returned in some sense to the Third World, another developmental stage it more or less skipped over the first time around. This fills its streets and sidewalks with not only a commercial hustle and bustle. When they don't sell street food, a great many marginal citizens of 21st century Los Angeles seem to get by as freelance genetic engineers, but a veritable Babel of languages, albeit a different one than the city's been heading for in reality. Deckard's police minder initially speaks a kind of Esperanto.
He's saying you under arrest, Mr. Decker.
And in addition to the Japanese and Chinese text visible everywhere on the streets, we also hear the occasional German. Maybe, in this alternate reality, the Axis won the war? Now that the majority of the world's population lives in cities, mostly those facing challenges which only a kind of retrofitting may address, we can appreciate more than ever how fully Blade Runner realizes its urban vision, right down to the infrastructural level of parking meters and crossing indicators. When asked about the movie, "What's going on here?" critic Pauline Kael supposedly replied, "It's the here that's going on." Like any solid noir, Blade Runner has its pessimism, though I can't help but feel optimistic that many qualities of its imagined Los Angeles may yet manifest in the real one. My hope springs particularly eternal for that building-side geisha. But until that day of full Blade Runnerization, we can also enjoy the film's qualities of Los Angeles noir in any era at its finest, especially the way it spares us a tidy ending.
It's too bad she won't live. But then again, who does?
For more on Notebook on Cities and Culture, a Los Angeles primer, or The City in Cinema, visit colinmarshall.org. The City in Cinema comes live to Portland, Oregon's Hollywood Theater on January 25th, 2015. Stay tuned for details.